Hey guys, what's going on? Dingmaster81 here. I'm going to do a real quick video today on top 5 tips to make you a better kayak fisherman. And I'm doing that right now. So let's jump right into this video. So I kind of had this idea the other day when I was fishing at one of my new favorite lakes. I went out there for, I probably went out there when I was actually fishing for around 6 hours, and I caught nothing. It was, it had to be probably one of the worst fishing days of my life. I threw maybe 25-ish lures, and of those lures through different sizes. I tried different colors, and the fish just were not wanting to bite. There was a bass fishing tournament. I learned later that there was actually a bass fishing tournament the day right before I went, so that's probably the reason. But it was, I took it very hard. I took that L really hard, and I kind of want to just give you guys some tips on kayak fishing. Things that helped me yesterday, but they didn't give me the fish, but things that really helped me yesterday, and we're gonna slide into this right now. So the first tip I'm gonna give you guys when fishing in a kayak is learn all the casting motions, I guess. Casting is something that's very underrated. You're gonna cast. If you're fishing, you're gonna cast maybe 1,000 times a day, depending on how long you fish and what type of baits you're actually fishing. So I think it's very important to learn all the different types of casts. There's your long bomb, long distance overhand casts with big crankbaits and stuff, and then you have a sidearm cast, roll cast. You have your normal type of flipping, which that's I consider that casting. You have your regular flip where you grab the line with your hand and just dip it into pockets. And you got your pitch, one-handed pitch, and then to add on to that, all those types of casts, learn how to do it with your opposite hand. I see a lot of anglers, I don't care what kind of position you are in your kayak or your boat or something. I see them always, if they if they're cast, if they cast with their let's say they have a left-handed reel. If they have a left-handed reel, they'll switch their rod to the left hand cast, then switch hands and start reeling. Is what you're going to find out is in a kayak is boat positioning is very hard. Boat positioning is probably the biggest disadvantage you get in a kayak versus a big bass boat. So sometimes you're going to be forced to cast with your left hand. I actually cast with my. I use right-handed reels, and I cast with my right hand. But I've learned now it's a lot more efficient to cast with the rod with my left hand, thumbing the spool with my left hand, and then just going straight into reeling with my right hand. And I've gotten to where I probably cast 90%. I'm probably 90% casting my left hand versus my right hand 100%. I've gotten really good with it, and I think it's been a very beneficial skill to have. The second thing I want to talk about is it seems like you guys hear this all the time, but you need to always carry a spinning rod, just one. But my only gripe with this is carry a extremely sensitive spinning rod with you on the kayak at all times. And the reason why I say that is I see guys, they'll be like, oh, I got one spinning rod on the boat, and it'll be their $50 Fluger combo, you know, and a good quality, you know, a spinning rod. You have a spinning rod because you want to be able to feel anything that bites it. Um, fish sometimes will just pick that bait up and they'll just sit there. You know, you need to have a rod that can, basically if the fish sniffs the bait, you feel them. You need to be able to feel anything that hits that bait. So, I mean, if you're gonna have one spinning rod on the kayak, I suggest you buy an extremely sensitive fishing rod. And you don't just cause I say an expensive fishing rod doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, just because I say a very sensitive fishing rod doesn't always mean price tags. It doesn't mean a huge price tag. If you could find a really nice sale, you can get a really good rod for the money. I bought my favorite spinning rod right now is a Mega Bass Orochi XX. I bought the Gen 1 model on sale. I bought that rod for $200. I kid you not, that is probably one of the most sensitive fishing rods I've ever bought. And by the way, I don't buy truly expensive fishing rods. That one was kind of on the higher end of what I normally buy. But sensitive rods, Dobbins Champion, for $260, I think is the top end of what they sell for. That's a very good rod for the money. G Loomis IMX Pro, I think that's a $300 rod. Which those rods aren't cheap, but you don't have to go buy a $500 or $600 NRX or a G Loomis Conquest. You don't have to buy that much sensitivity. I'm just saying, if you're gonna get one really sensitive rod out of all your rods, make sure it's a spinning rod. That's my point. The third tip I'm gonna give you in a kayak is have a great paddle. This is something I actually don't have right now. I have a very terrible paddle. It's like a $50 paddle. Which I used to have some nice paddles. I kind of have been doing some testing, kind of figuring out, what the difference is. And I can tell you straight up is if you buy a $200, $300 paddle, you will instantly just be a better angler. The reason why is you can paddle and you're not going to be tired. I paddled, my motor that I use actually died last time I went out fishing, that really horrible fishing day where I caught nothing. And I paddled almost 6 miles to get back to the boat ramp from where I was at. And I tell you what, it was probably the most terrible thing I've ever done, like, in my kayak. Kayak fishing should be fun. This day was not fun. It was absolutely awful. So I just want you to understand is a more expensive paddle is typically gonna be way lighter, like almost half as light. The blade's actually gonna be a better shape, so it's actually gonna catch water better, and it's gonna propel you forward a lot better. But just simply put, just get a more expensive and lighter paddle. Don't think you want to buy a starter paddle and then get a intermediate paddle then a more expensive paddle, because by then you probably spent already $700. If you're thinking about it, just do it. Just go spend $200, $300 on paddle. You will not regret it. I recommend the Bending Branches paddles. I've used the Ace, and I really want to use the Angler Pro, but the Angler Ace is an insanely good paddle for the money. I think for Bending Branches, I think it is the best value for the money. Fourth tip I'm going to give you guys for kayak fishing is have an alternative mode of propulsion. And what I mean by that is, if I think you become a better angler right away if you have a propulsion system you can use while you're fishing. When you have a paddle, I mean, you can have it on your lap while you're fishing and you can fish, but you really have to pick up your paddle, stop fishing, reposition yourself, or move to a new spot or something, and you just can't fish. Me and Christian OPH Outdoors, I always mention in my videos because that's where I started. I want to make sure everyone knows where I actually started. But he has a Hobie Outback, and that's actually it's a very good kayak. I recommend that for anybody looking to get a pedal kayak. And I sort of kind of went the cheaper route. I have an Old Town Predator 13 that actually I put a Minn Kota trolling motor on it, a transom mount trolling motor, and that's the same way as both of those systems. Kind of just provide hands-free fishing, and you really, I think you get a lot more casts in the day when you have that. And personally, more casts to me means more fish, which isn't always the case. But if you cast 3 times more than the other guy is, you should, in theory, catch more fish. So and the last tip I'm gonna give you guys to become a better kayak angler is minimize the amount of gear you have. And I'm actually guilty of not doing this. A lot of the time I take lures and stuff that I'm not even going to use on the day because I could use them. I think you really need to trim down your gear to where when you unload it from the car, it's not a pain. When I get all my stuff out of my car onto my kayak, because I don't have a trailer, I actually car top my kayak, which is another story in itself. But you need to make sure that you need to minimize the amount of tackle that you have on the boat. Now, there are certain days where you want to carry 10 or 12 fishing rods in your kayak. I understand that. I did that the other day. But there are certain days and there are certain bodies of water you can go to. Like the more experience you get on a body of water, you can kind of understand what kind of bite is going to happen. Is when we go to, there's a popular pond we go to. There's always a finesse bite, but there's always a really nice reaction bite. You can fish spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, lipless cranks. There's also a really good flipping bite when we go out there, and so I can kind of adjust my rods accordingly. When we go out to the lake I went to the other day, I took a bunch of fishing rods, but I really understood that it was either going to be one, it's going to be a finesse bite, or I was cranking riprap. That was going to be my pattern, and none of those really worked. The fish weren't biting. It seemed like I saw fish on the graph, they just weren't really biting. But I took a lot more gear than I really needed for that type of situation. I tried to do flipping and do some of that stuff, but wasn't really where those fish were at. The point I'm trying to get across to you guys is, there are very simple things you guys can do to become a better kayak fisherman. And most of the time it doesn't take money at all. Most of the time, it's just adjusting your gear a little bit, especially with casting. I think the biggest tip out of all of those is learning how to do all the different kinds of casts, and including skipping. I actually skipped over skipping. But that's another casting technique that takes a lot of skill. And basically learn how to do everything with your opposite hand. You're going to figure out that, if you're casting to one side, the bow of the kayak or the other side, you'll switch hands, and, you just become a lot more fluid. You become a lot more efficient on the water. So, I hope this helps you guys. Like and subscribe if you like these kind of videos, and I'll talk to you soon.